Every time I communicate through screen lines adaptations, I communicate to all your avatars at their frequencies. I always connect to your settings and travels in the line communication of chronological order. The chronological order is the existence of the now, not the past, not the present, not the future. So the center core system is already set calculations. You guys have to start identifying what that means. You are the center operations of you. See, we're so confused, we don't know what space and time is, right? Looking up, that's not space. Outside line, that's not the sun, that's not the moon. It's inside you. Okay? This is not inside, that's not outside. That's not how you see it through perspective. That's not how you see it through the VR system. Everything is inside you. The computer operation game is inside you. The machine operation line center location is inside you. Inner spectrum, outer spectrum, inner out line condition setting, in, out, and audio. Okay? You're creating bandwidth of space inside you first. You're creating longitude and latitude of you, coordinates of you, modifications of you, navigations of you, travels of you, mind conception, locations, settings of travels, and settings of you, right? Space and time is inside you. Space-time and clocking is inside of you. Space-time's anomaly is everything inside of you, right? Space-time and inner orbits and outer orbits inside you. Inner space, outer space is inside of you, okay? I want to make that very well clear where nobody gets confused. Your Earth is inside you. You are the Earth of the spectrum. Your Earth itself is its machine operation. It is the computer operation settings. So it's important to understand that so you get a better understand where you're going. You don't know where you're going until you know where you have been. And that comes to ancestry, history, and celestial. So you're not going through a story. You're not giving a story. You're not a story. Okay? This is a muscle memory of you living. It's not a modification of a story. A story is a script. This is not a movie. Okay, of what you think it is. This is not a 2-hour film. This is an evolution of you coming into you, not coming back to you, coming out of something that was not supposed to be created for you because you didn't understand what you're doing, the configuration of the mind itself. The mind's the intelligence, the brain's the position of the computer, and your vessel is the machine, guys. You got to put that together now, right? The whole idea here is if you stand in the center, all you're doing is you're processing data and highways. You're expanding out, up, down, cross line, any line communication setting. So you're creating that anomaly in that position to all levels. You're creating that bandwidth of space that's inside you. And once you create that, and you understand the configurations and you understand the convergence and the location of your system, and you understand the body doesn't need to be convinced, you understand what the body is of its own system, its own operation setting, then you understand that when you put yourself together, you become the Earth of the final frontier. Yes, the final frontier of you. So it has a pivotal point when you start to recognize these things. Like if you put a position at all levels, calculation lines and settings, right? Your phone is up here and you're standing in your Earth. You're going to see everything around you is nothing but space. So you are the center operation. Everything around your setting is the expansion of space. Space of the mind. So the whole point here, guys, is to get out of resistance and come into the highest formation locations and settings. The equilibrium link to the mind of its intelligence expands the mind of its consciousness. Okay, that puts you in all levels of formation to its settings. This is what it is in track locations, right? So you don't get confused anomaly. All right, so let's stand in the center. Okay. Also, too, if you want to hand in your test, that's totally fine. Monday, we have the correlation setting and review and evaluation to all levels of expansion, location, and evolution screens. That has the direct lines that communicate to its settings, right? All right, so in that position locations, I'm standing in the center. You have somebody standing in the center correlations. Okay, that's me standing in the center. Okay, I don't move. This is not space. This is not the Earth. So you are in the center of its setting. So all you're doing is you're setting your platforms, right? Okay, So you have to understand, once you understand more levels of you, you expand higher levels of consciousness. So the position of the earth is just an optical illusion. The actual earth is you and tractions. So this basically comes in a tither and a 3 lines and a 4-track location, right? So once you understand that, you have a 4-line cycles: earth, air, water, and fire. Heart line, this is the H line screen. This is the platform. There's the H. Okay? So you haven't left anywhere. You've always been home. You don't leave home. So once you expand the mind, it comes into lines of the line communication of its awareness of where it is and where it always has been, where it never leaves. You don't leave. It's the consciousness of the mind, of the intelligence, puts everything in platform of communication. So your highways expand. Okay? Your highways expand in setting. Okay? Your highways expand in setting. Okay? So that's all it is. Creating platforms to expand the mind, creating platforms to expand the mind. That's all this is of attractions. You stay in the center operation of system. So when you do this and you expand the bandwidth, the position of the earth gets bigger inside your system in track location. Gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? So the actual setting, the energetic dome, gets bigger over time. It expands, right? Inside of you. So once you synchronize yourself into yourself, all the formations of your set calculation system, what happens next in track calculation lines, everything that you co-created inside comes outside. So you expand inside first, and then you expand outside. You expand inside and outside, and then you expand inside and outside of you. That's your simulation. And everything around you is a hologram, a bubble. You live inside a bubble. You can't even get out of the bubble until you understand what a bubble is. Okay? So understanding that lines of expansion, then you understand the mind itself. The mind is the intelligence. Okay? So once you understand you are the center operation, okay, then you understand what your earth is. Okay? The earth itself is the optical illusion that you see. But when you let that go, you realize you are the 5 elements of space and time that's inside of you. You come into self-modification, you come into self-development, you come into infrastructure, you come into co-creation, right? It starts there, right? I'm getting technical, trying to get you guys to understand these things. So once you get into that, you're the earth. You go anywhere you want. Okay, your earth can go anywhere it wants in track locations because it's in the highest levels of the mind itself. Right? So the actual earth is moving now. It's moving, right? In its directory. It's moving in its directory. Very powerful stuff, right? So the platforms are moving with you. That puts all levels of communication to your settings in your game centers. So you track your provision lines, psych lines, track interference, high position locations, calculation lines. You expand more lines of bandwidth. You just keep evolving your system of expansion. But your earth goes wherever it wants of travel. So that's what makes it more real. When you get out of resistance, you get more lines of communications into response, then into reaction and calculation. Okay? So once you understand that, it comes into all levels to its setting, right? To its location grid. Okay? So that's all it is. It's expanding the north, the east, the west, the south in traction. Expanding your platforms in setting. Expanding your circulation and rotations in setting. Okay? Expanding your Merkaba, your tetrahedrons, your colossal communication system, your modification lines, your teleportation units. Expansion, people. So this is now your earth. Your earth can turn anything it wants. But the mind of its intelligence has to identify its system first before it has to communicate to its setting to understand through process how you have to come into your own expansion inside calculation. Okay? So that is your Earth now. And a mechanisms of travel, right? It's not circular. It's not round. It's a diamond. Very powerful, isn't it? So you change into anything. You morph into everything that you perceive and see because you're understanding the mechanism and line connections of the mind of navigation of its obstacles that puts everything in balance of communications, how you see yourself through your binary, through your coding, through your cortex, or through your design. Okay? But you've got to get into your connections, how to get into your grounds, your powers, your atmospheres, and link yourself into your highways. Okay? That's where you have to start. I don't like getting technical, but that's the only way everybody understands. Okay? And the reason why I'm talking slow is so you get a better understanding what is happening to you from inside of design. Your body, the vessel, the pod, the vehicle, the space ark, the capsule, whatever's happening to you is changing through modification of space and time. To get you and to understand how to process that is in the VR system, the virtual reality of where you are in the mind of its consciousness. Now, once it's outside, it's now a hologram. And everything around you is already in balance. Okay? It's that calculations, right? So that's communication. It's energetic dome. Look at that. And look at the expansion. Look, this is the Earth now at another frequency. Okay? This is the Earth now at another frequency. This is the Earth now at another frequency in a calculation system, right? So you become the Earth. You are the Earth and machine operation at all lines of communication. The only thing that exists is you in the center operation. So imagine you are empty space of the mind itself, understands the modification, location, setting to the brain, communication of the computer self, understands the hardware, software lines of communication, the modification of itself, and track locations and direct locations of its heart, location to its soul, identification settings of light and travel, and position location of its body through time capacity. All through configuration, right? So that's what's happening to your settings inside calculation and expansion, right? You don't leave the center operation of you, right? And let's go back to that setting interactions in calculations. This changes. This doesn't. It's this. So try to stay in position. Space doesn't change. You change. So the expansion just becomes bigger, right? So let's go around cycle. Let's go through a donut cycle location, right? So this is you right here. So all you're doing is expanding, right? You're becoming more lines of the mind of space. See, space is getting bigger, 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 bigger. It's getting bigger, 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 bigger. Expansion, right? And then you have your platforms that you go through, right? Your highways, your tractions, okay? So it's basically understanding you're at 144. That's totally fine. So you go in your data highways and traffications. This is you. All right. So you're here in position, right? And you're scanning, looking down. Okay. So this is you. Okay. That's you. Me. That's me, right? This is the mind. Looking down of its earth, of you, right? The mind is not here, but it's here when needed. So it's understanding the space itself is the mind of itself. The space doesn't get bigger until you understand the explorations of you through expansion of the mind of your navigations and how to understand how to see that through your highways of set design. Okay? The mind is the intelligence. Okay? So if the mind's the intelligence, what is this? What is the space? What is the expansions of the space? It's the bandwidth, right? So getting that position lines attractions, space again does not get bigger until you understand the configuration of your binaries, the transistors, resistors, of its light switches, and know exactly what you're doing with your thoughts, your actions, and your patterns of behavior. I'm trying to get you guys to understand these things. You don't move. Everything around you expands inside the mind. So I think we're getting a little bit of understanding now how it comes into a bandwidth of expansion. I've said design, right? So you have to understand you become, you are, I am the earth. That's inside of me. And once I understand how to direct and redirect my position location system, everything gets easier in track location, direct and redirect. What do you do when you come to position lines of centers? What does it create? A colossal communication lines as applications, right? It creates a black hole. It creates a dark realm. See, look at this. See? So everything has a line states of direct and redirect. Everything has a line communication of direct and redirect in calculation settings. So all you're doing is keeping yourself going forward in tractions, right? The direct lines of 3 track locations are 4 line cycles or 5 line communication setting of 6. See? Right? So when you put that together, what do you come in position of? An energetic dome. Look at that. Boom. Okay? So it's amazing once you understand how to expand the minds, right? The more you expand the mind, the more you come into the center operation of you. You start to grow, right? The only thing that grows is the expansion of the mind, of space. You just evolve yourself, okay, in your system, an outer spectrum. So you just become more machine operation of everything in settings, right? But the center operation of you is the earth that sets its tone, that sets its rhythm, that sets its pattern of behavior. All right. Now, once you understand that, then you understand everything is inside position of you, how to use the lights of travel, how to use the tractions of travel, how to use the configurations of travel, how to use the mind of navigations of travel. Okay. And set design. Everything is set, design, in chronological order that's in your film strip and set calculation line system. Understanding how to use the projector of its projection. Okay. Projector, right? Projection. Okay. So there's always ways of looking at that. You can look at it on a profile and line position locations. But the setting correlates to setting track lines in position into your lobes. Okay. You got 2 central line communication settings and all communication direct and redirect line, right over left, left or right in track locations. 2 air track location lines setting heights and interference. Line communications, round lines, split lines, cross line, diamond core, line shift, height, position, locations, calculations. In that direct lines, right? Sun is here, moon is here. So the sun and moon come together through the eye central. So when the eye central gets strong enough, it comes out. Everything that you co-created inside comes outside through its realm. The sun gets in position, the moon gets in projection in all levels in calculation system, and then you expand outside of the VR system, right? What you co-created from inside, okay, comes the outer spectrum of everything. So the VR system becomes its own space of time, of its own modification, of its own mind system. Complicated stuff because all you're seeing is lines of communication setting through perception, right? Or how you see things in track location, how you see things in line signals, how you see things through location grids, okay? How you see things through platforms and track location, right? So that is a basic understanding, okay? So once you understand that, life is going to get a lot more easier for you to understand your higher self, your avatar, and your sim, okay? So the higher self, the avatar, and the sim, all right? Sim basically equals lines and navigations. Mind equals lines of the mind lines, right? The avatar controls everything through its GOD. Geometric of its design. The higher self controls everything in line connected to its earth, air, water, and calculation lines to its fire interactions. So if you understand how this all works, then you understand the 3 lines of communication setting that signifies the settings. Sigma. Sigma. Okay? Signs of intelligence at ground lines into the minds of its awareness. Sigma. Says core track interference and bracket communication setting to travel, right? Sigma and line setting line calculation lines of the higher self, the avatar, and the sim. 3 great ground centers lines of travels, right? Higher self is control of the graph calculation line screens. Avatar is control of the power line screens, and the sim is controlled through the simulation box location screens. Okay? So that's communication triangulation, triangulations, all setting calculation modify, all through Sigma, right? Signs, okay? 2, its intelligence, of its grounds, of its mind, of its awareness. Sigma, people. Pay attention to that. All right, track provision lines of cycles. Now we go through binary line connections of position of programs. Let's add line setting high interference and 18 tractions and position lines of 3 volume, communication lines of 21 line rotation, and calculation lines of 35 set calculation of seconds. That's right. So adding lines of course setting. Sets position lines of 40 seconds over 1 over 2, right? That puts lines of fractions over pi. Okay, fractions over pi in position and track location, right? So you have to really understand how you want to see your time measure in your scales and bounds in position locations, how you want to see your binaries. So the more you code factors, the line settings of code weaving, is really understand that your mechanisms of your vessels, your pods, your vehicles, or your ships really starts to understand the coding of you, right? And say, oh my gosh, okay, I'm starting to understand this now. So I have to go through coding to actually heal this and heal that. Yep. Because you're reaching those frequencies now at a higher level, right? Especially when you go into higher lines of higher communication setting of its program and position. That's a 4-track provision, 1 cycle, 3 lines of communication of flux. Ground standard calculation lines, equal lines of core track and interference. Cross locations, up lines, swing lines, and position location with setting. Intelligent, see it, right? Sets communication lines. Everything has a line settings to a trifactor that factors its fractions over screen over pi. Process communication lines of platforms of 1 traction, 1 division location to its setting. Process communication line direct signals in position location to historical fields and travel. Cross locations 1 setting cycles and line conditions of 2 panels and track location. Direct modification line screens and high adaptation lines of service. Line communication of its clustering and travel. Process location setting. So the actual line condition high position locations sets lines of communication lines of shoulders. Directs lines of communication lines that comes across location setting to its intelligence of its formation location to its system of travel. Okay. Then you get the eye set location lines in line rotation surface and travel. Intelligence. See it? Boom. Right? Open all cycles and line communication setting in position of process and calculation. Okay? So the eye central lines that have a spectrum lines of up and a spectrum lines of down. Set lines of communication in high position of its program. Calculate and modify in line conditions of going up and cross locations going down and signal. Communicate ground centers, circulation, rotation, and setting. Process calculation lines and triangulation line position location to its system and travel. See how I changed the formation? Ground centers, operation lines, energize. Oh, look at that. A vortex down and cross location. Okay? All through mechanism lines and high correlation lines of attractions. Okay? Then I got line communication ground centers, platforms, and set location line setting location, right? Then you go through platforms 0, 0, and 3 0 locations, right? Then I go through time jump, right in position across correlation setting and travel. See? From there to there, right? So really get into detail, really get into modifications, really understand how this all works inside of you. because the atoms and molecules, it's nothing but a assembly line. They work all together. So once you come in the configuration, you have to understand how to go lines of communication, changing the seconds, minutes, and hours of your earth line connections that's in the center operation of you and tractions. So getting into the position locations, remember the binary lines, you go through box, triangulation, equals location to triangulation box, right? Because that puts in the modifications are. So you get a 7-track division, 3 cycles. 3 cycles line communication starting off, right? Then you get position lines at E track location. Everybody knows what that is, right? Set position lines according to center interference. Male cycle, female cycle. Process calculation lines of platforms of 1, 2, and line can sub-divot. Process calculation, see the face? See it's 2 faces? Okay, so we're going to do sonar line communication and setting lines. We go through the open sequence into the brain frequency pattern. See the brains above? Look at that. Boom. Platform communication lines are lines of telepathy. Right, one to another, right? Travel coordination lines of center lines, high center location of 1, 2, and 3 track location. Process calculation lines of ground centers, box lines of 1 platform, and triangulation lines of 2 set locations. Process calculation triangulation line is setting box line rotation surface and tractions. Direct lines of modification 1 center, 1 surface, 1 track location lines of 2 solar sails and track location. All through box triangulation or triangulation box guys. And again, you get technical line screen. Let's go through the triangulation line settings. All through set calculations. Bounds of communications of bandwidth. This is bandwidth through the box and triangulation. All right. And then you go through colorations. Let's go through line connections. See how I open up the sequence and line connection setting? Gets bigger, right? Then you go through blue. The basic ground is the in and out in audio, right? Your earth perception, line setting, your correlations to its calculation is the perspective, how you see things through spectrum calculation, right? So let's go through the blue and track location, right? And then you go through all levels. Then we go through white, cloak and dagger, right? That's the basic grounds of 3, right? Now, triangulation of point lines of attractions at position lines of point centers, 2 atom lines of rotation and setting, inside correlation, right? Setting communication lines of 1 and position 2 platforms. Platform communication lines of ground center line conditions box triangulation box, and line center line position location to its energetic line screen and adaptation lines of surface. See how everything becomes a travel of mechanisms? And this is all created through the earth of you. Your earth is changing constantly, right? So the center core system is you in line system. Your track provision line cycle is all unification setting. But it's all levels of communications in lines of spectrum and calculation, okay? So it's amazing how you change in the seconds, minutes, and hours and platforms and line position location with settings all through travels. But it's all communication setting the colossal calculation lines of travel communication, right? Then you have a direct line signal, and then you have a cross locations, right? It's like a tripod in line division. Very complicated stuff, right? And then you got platforms, walking platforms of communication setting to travel. Okay, very powerful stuff, right? Now remember, what you have to understand, the center core system is you in all levels of the center, which is you. So once you start to identify that, the mind was always going to be up here. But when the mind comes into the center, you become the center of the mind itself. That's where it comes into out of expansion and all levels of you in future adaptation. The provision lines opens all signals locations of its clocking setting, right? This is all inside the earth of changing. So this is getting ready through modification, and it's changing everything around its earth. It's changing its shape. So when it changes its shape and position, it's very powerful stuff, right? So the earth, 3 sectors line position, 1 ground centers, 1 power, 1 atmosphere. Let's start with applications, right? So you understand the platforms of communication, your highways. So the more you expand faster, the more you allocate position time frames into 144 frame in settings, right? Sets lines of position 1, 2, 3, and 4 settings. Cross locations 1, 2, 3, and 4 settings. Crosses calculations into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines of settings. So it's all about understanding that position lines of calculations, the platforms of your earth, is changing mechanisms of travel. Okay, it's changing mechanisms of travel. It's morphing into different lines of communications. It's trying to find out where it is in track location, right? So once it understands position lines of high correlation setting, Once the mind center lines the system, it comes in center operation of space and time. It becomes its own mind system. So you have to understand how this all works through its binary transistors of its resistors, right? Getting into modification is really understanding the mind of you, not the mind that is in set of you, okay? The mind of you. The mind that's in set of you is the chronological order. The mind that is position of you is the future adaptation of you. So once you get into that process, then you understand all levels of configuration. When you understand the film strips of you, when you get into the center operation of you to understand the technologies, when you come into 2030, asset design. Okay. So that's 2 million tracks, 0 operation lines of 30 settings, right? But I think it's very powerful when you start to direct signals location to its system. It all comes in calculations, right? So your Earth is constantly changing its design. Okay? It's constantly changing its design. Okay? So I'm just trying to get you guys to understand what is going on with you when you don't get control of your thoughts, your actions, and your emotions. Okay? So now the mechanism is going to be a lot more trickier now because the platforms are going a lot faster in a 144 platform. Equals lines, core lines, high interference, overline, 3 lines of communication setting program, right? Direct lines over pi, and check cohesion setting travels, point lines of graphs, direct lines. So that's 144, okay, equals lines of 144 over pi. Platforms and settings, lines of travel occasion, lines of 244, 344, or 444 and set design. Okay, so you got to go through those location grids and higher track location lines of provision. Okay, getting the position lines of calculation lines, the expansion of the highways really starts to expand the minds, really starts to travel faster and track location. Right, setting up those platforms, make sure you do that so the dockings come in, so the XT1000s or online communications can dock their systems. Right, so every time you dock the system, okay, the XT1000s are expanding your light screens, right? Like this in traction, right? It's opened up more lines of divots in the earth line communication. Process calculation lines, sets lines, core set interference into your crop circles and correlation. All right, direct lines of signals, modificates the highways, track locations at H line screen, puts lines of 2 panels, solid matter, and line rotation surface. Process calculation line screen location comes in higher levels of location grids. In platitude division location is setting through operation. Process communication lines of platforms gets a lot more trickier when you go through sonar. It detects high coordinates and setting of travels when you get in position piece how to use jones that puts lines of formation ground centers into expansions of the mind system and track location. Very complicated stuff, right? The placebos and everything through calculation highways to all levels of string theory and calculation. So, but that's all it is, guys. Your Earth is just morphing into different lines of shapes back to its original design. Okay, and once it understands that, the mind itself becomes all levels of view of future adaptations. The muscle memory is the co-creation of the mind, its system. Now that's a position locations where it has to understand the projector of its projection, how it sees through its perspective and position, right? Going this way in traction, going this way in tractions, in direct signals, right? Through its location grid. Okay. Then when you go to the location grid, then you come into the tunnel, then you get in position lines of course system, then you get line communication setting, all levels of wormholes and track location. Okay. Getting into wormholes is the platform to line communication where the XT1000s go through travel, right? Then you got the archetypes flying this way and travel, flying this way and travel and track location, right? So then you have the star lines. It looks like stars, but those aren't stars. The actual XT1000, it's not shaped as a star. You don't see it as a star because you can't see it up close. When you see it up close, you see exactly what it is. So it has spurts of line communications. It spurts out, right? It's talking with you in track location. Light screens, dark line rotation, surface, location, and setting. Okay? So it's like, and then disappears. If it disappears and comes back, right? It's morphing to another dimension lines of space, right? So it's vortexing here, and now it's here in track location, right? So getting in position is knowing lines of calculation of the cloud changes. Let's go into the clouds. There's the cloud right there, attractions. Now we're going to factor reset position of the program, the overline cross location near sky grids and line communication setting position of programs. It direct lines of sights, opens the line communication setting, all levels of the sun and the moon that rotates the surface in lines of spectrum and track location. Very complicated stuff. But it's a lot of fun when you understand more lines of your expansion of the mind of the bandwidth. These are the things that you can do in line position locations. But once you understand how to direct and redirect your system, because that's what this position locations of the team has to come to. You have to come in your patterns of behavior or direct and redirect now. The faster you go, the more you come into creation of setting, right? Of your own system, of your own mind system, not the correlation of the muscle memory. Okay? You actually become the mind of self. Okay? You're not coming into discovery. You're coming out of the optical illusion. So once you understand that, in that formation lines, the data formation lines the screen, the position locations to all calculate modify puts everything into calculations back into balance. The back into balance puts everything in correlations how you communicate your settings into all calculate modify in triangulation lines of space modulation and track locations. Right? Very complicated stuff. All right, so travel mechanism is everything in travel, but it's very powerful how you come in lines of communications, right? How to direct and redirect through binary lines. Okay, so in that position, when the team gets in a 1,000 line screen, they're going to see all levels, all line communication expansion of bandwidth, right? So they're going to be more open through a window in position of seeing more interactions, all through direct and redirect signals and calculation. So once you understand that, direct and redirect, right? So one goes this way and one goes this way, right? Okay, so what you have to understand in that communication, once they go faster and faster, they're rotating on cycles, and they're in a continuous force of expansion of the mind of consciousness. That's what happens, right? So it keeps going faster and faster and faster and faster. So once you're at a certain level of communication of consciousness, right, you're in a higher levels of flux now, right, in track locations. So when you get to the higher levels of the mind itself becomes the conscious awareness of everything in settings, and seconds, minutes, and hours, minutes, and seconds. So it can lines of position lines of travel, so 20 equals lines of 7, or it can add 19 lines of setting, charge mechanism, line condition setting into all levels. Let's wait till we get to 40 screens, okay, and track location, right? So there's no time measure here at all. There's no minutes, there's no seconds, there's no hours in track location, right? So I can add 3 lines of panels and 3 set locations, 7 lines of settings, charge mechanism lines of power, direct lines modification of sun and the moon rotation, travel lines of 20 line cycles, 2 lines, 0 line rotation surface, solar line direct signals and solar sail and track location, indirect lines and high interference, 19 lines of setting, process calculation lines, sets lines of communication back in 7, sets correlation lines into 40 line provision lines of cycles, resurface locations into 3 circles, line condition setting into 3 numbers of settings, back in line screen locations, adaptation lines of surface. Very complicated stuff through platforms, right? And again, all you're doing is you're creating around the Earth line rotation surface interactions, right? So you never leave the center. That's always you, right? So I think you guys are getting a little bit more understanding now how this all works. You don't leave the center. The platforms just leave. Okay, you expand here, you go there, you go this way. So you're creating your Omni highways, webbing system, cog webbing settings, correlation tracks, high division, plasma screens, plasma walls, line screen location, adaptation lines of force. But it's very powerful once you understand how to direct and redirect your system and position lines of travel. Okay, so all you're doing is expanding mind of spectrum, right? But you don't leave. It's the mind that does everything through its nothing of its awareness, of its consciousness. The mind itself, okay, is setting you through muscle memory. Getting out of the muscle memory puts you in the mind of yourself, okay? through modulation of center operation, right? So, and then once you understand that, but it's fascinating when you actually look at through schematics. It's pretty incredible stuff when you look at it. It's just fantastic. Knowing exactly what you're doing through your travels and making those locations, guys, through your binaries. And it's all done from inside. This is all done from inside, from my stomach, right? My stomach is hungry, right? That's what it's creating. See, it's open space, right? So, all right. So line setting high interference, and that's why you don't want to bring anything to existence until you understand its true meaning, right? So that's position lines of track calculus lines. Track calculus lines, there's your stomach location, right? All right. So there's a spectrum line settings. There's a black hole inside your stomach. So you have to truly understand how to put this all in position lines of travels. Getting that position lines of balance really understands the process of communication system. Process lines, change lines, communication interference, orb line, track location settings, back into balance, position location of travel, right? So it's back where it is, right? But I had to go through a circular line screen adaptation lines of set location to a system and travel, right? So everything inside is an assembly line. They all work together, right? So I'm trying to get you to understand that your actual vessel inside is nothing but space modulation, space detection, space security, space alert. So this is what it is in line settings, okay? This is exactly what it is. Once you understand the real space, the space is inside that you create, okay? The planets that you create are inside locations. All right, so I'm just going to give you a brief graph of what it is in position. Starting off with that position locations, the calculation puts everything information lines of balance and track locations. All right, it's very powerful once you understand the direction of what's going on through you calculations. All right. Okay, so that's you. That's you. That's what it is. So all spectrum is inside you. Colors, okay, all inside you. See? So that's the expansion. That's the mind. That's a complete cycle. That's very complicated stuff. So once you do this, all this, let's just go through orange and pink, or orange like position travels, right? That position lines of travels, then you go through 12 graphic screen lines, you go through green, you can go through all colors, you can go through 3 colors, but every time you change your thoughts, you change the coloration lines of screen lines, adaptation lines of screen location system that changes everything to modification lines of all calculation letters, numbers, shades, symbols, like positional location of travels, binary communication line settings, transistors over pi, correlated track interference, into mechanism line position location of power, and generic communication screens adaptation, right? So that's what you're doing. Okay, that's what you're doing, right? So once you understand that, this is what happens next. You start to travel faster. Okay, so when you're traveling faster, the actual mind separates the mind, and you become the mind of itself, of all operation system, which is no line communication of its muscle memory, all formation location of balance and track location of center operation. So that pulls you in and track lines of attractions that you already know in line position locations. So you basically come into the expansion of the mind itself, right? So what that does is it basically exposes you into your energetic dome in a formation location of balance that expands the mind system all through collaboration line setting of future adaptation. Okay? You become the center operation of you at all lines of position. Okay? But that's all it is. That's all it is. Right? So you get into that point, and this is what it is. Okay, let's go into this. Let's go into that. Let's just start with that, right? This is the setting locations, right? Start with that location system, right? So you're here, right? So you actually become everything in setting the design, right? So you're a control. You are the mind. You are the mind. Okay, you're the mind. All right. So you're the expansion. You're the expansion of what you're doing. So here in position, 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 here in position. Okay, very powerful stuff, right? So all this does is basically expands the mind of collaboration into a levels of absorption, into the machine of center operation of you and track location of highway of expansion. Okay. Just showing you guys how this all works, but it's very fascinating when you start to understand, right? How this all puts position locations. So that's what it is. You morph into their intelligence of its formations, right? Because you understand you through your vessel of design, right? It's the makeup of the design that you have to truly understand how this works inside of you, okay? You build the space and the time, right? Time is the maintenance. Space is the evolution, okay? Space is the evolution. Time is the maintenance of clocking, right? So it's not a race, okay? So once you understand that, the exposure in position separates you from the mind, and the mind itself becomes you of the mind, of its intelligence, of you. You become the center of you of all operation. All set designed for you. That's what it is in traction. But it's incredible when you come to that position location of travels, right? How that all works. So, you know, getting into that position locations, I always like to get in that lines of configuration to settings. Okay. This is just the beginning for the team. All right. So once you understand that, the actual space, it expands so much consciousness, so much awareness. You just understand everything of its operation. Okay, how you're operated and how everything is operated, right? Because you're connected to everything and everything's connected to you through tether, right? So if anything is out of sync, you're out of sync because you're connected to everything, right? So that's what it is. All right, let's get a structure line. So let's get a communication lines, structure communication setting and track location. Let's start with that calculation, right? Then we got a communication lines of its phone and track location. There's the phone, right? And then we got the pad, just a blue pad, position location, right? Digital pad, right? And line communications on my computer in frame position location. It's calculations, right? All right. So you are in the center operation, right? You don't leave at all, right? So are you looking here? You're looking here. You're looking here, and you're looking here all at once. Okay. So what you have to understand, everything has a platform. Everything is a platform. Everything is a platform in position, right? Everything has a platform, 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 and platform. Okay, everything has to have a platform, right? So once you understand that, then it travels on its own system, its own correlations, of its own setting, of its own time, of its own calculation, right? So it's very powerful once you understand how to direct the lines of communication, lines of panels to your binaries of communications, right? Travel mechanisms going down, shift cross location of settings, right? Going this way. Or lines of communication going this way and communication lines are going this way in track location, right? That's what everything is doing. The center operation of you should know exactly what's going on through platforms, locations, settings, and structures, all through schematics, all through its binaries. So check this out, right? In position locations. So who is the center operation of you? Who is the primer? You. You are the missing piece of the center operation that puts you together, of everything around you, guys. You are the primer of the solid position lines of track calculation of truth and false narratives. Hoo-ah. Mind blown. Truth and false narratives. You are the primer to put all this together in track locations to your computer operation, right? Truth, false, truth, false. Truth, false, truth, false. Okay? Setting position of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Put together, right? Position lines 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Put together. Position lines of calculation settings 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All put together. You are the primer to put everything all together, to bring everything of attractions in all line position locations, to understand The nothingness is to understand the awareness of the consciousness of everything around you of combination, putting it all together in tractions and set design. Right? You are the center operation of your primers, your binaries, your transistors, and your resistors of everything around you and set calculations. I just show you how you put a primer together all through a computer, all through a track locations of structure and line settings, a phone in position locations, my pad in track locations and settings, or anything of computer operation. Hoo-ah! Okay? That's all this is. So you stay in the center. Okay? So you got a high core study and inference of trial point lines of graphs. Everything has a high indication line set location system. Everything that you see in line communication, obstruction lines, and schematic locations and position location has its own binary lines of traction locations, right? Through its own fractions. Getting that position location of ratio proportions, right? Try to understand what that means, ratios and proportions, right? What does it mean to you? Because it means something different to everybody else. You've got to get into the basic grounds of formula equations, guys. You really do, right? Get out of the tables, get out of the labels, and everything comes in information locations. But to identify you, you are the connections of its solid matter. This is solid matter, right? This is solid matter right here, right? This is solid matter. Okay? But everything in between in lines, and when I say between in track locations, there's a high line and position across location, right? That is the platform in position, right? So everything inside in track location is solid matter, right? So you got space and you got time, track locations, right? So everything inside is plasma, okay, of communication, right? Everything outside is solid matter, okay? So what I mean by that is if you basically close your eye like this, okay, you can see one side, but if you open your eye, you can see both sides. So there's always two panels of everything. There's always above, there's always a below. There's always a back, there's always a forward. There's always a ground. So you always have to understand how you see things in the spectrum, how you see things direct and redirect in calculation setting, right? So it's important you understand that in track locations, right? So there's two solid panels. Everything inside is all liquid formations of travel, which is going extremely fast, right? So that's what it is. Two solid panels and you in the center. Okay? Isn't that amazing? To really understand that through all calculations? How it comes into all levels of exploration, right? And you can add different colors too. You know, you can add red, right? And that's allocations, right? So it's really getting control in your systems, how to use your patterns of behavior. So that position to its calculation lines, once you understand that, your actual self separates the particles in settings. So you actually become the space of time. Okay? This is what it is. Your whole vessel separates and comes back together of its own mind system of all levels of operation. Okay? This is what it is. You become everything information of its primer, the center operation of you in track locations. Okay? I'm just showing you here. That's what it is. This is you in center operation of everything in combination. Connected everything and everything's connected to you in opposition. So you're the center operation of everything. So this is you, this is you, this is you. Everything you see is you. So your anomalies split into the atmospheres, hemispheres, stratospheres, biospheres, ionospheres, trianospheres, correlation spheres, track spheres, central spheres, right? Okay, you become the center operation of everything, right? So basically the highway's everywhere. Highway here, here, here. I mean, it's just crazy what you can do in line setting, all levels of you, travel line, position, location, center operation of you, and calculation modification. You become the center of everything. Look, center of you. See, there's the face. Whoa! See the face? See? So your vessel is no longer solid matter. It's split. So you expand, and the mind itself comes back to its mind of itself, which is intelligence of its formations, all through communication. So powerful, isn't it? It's absolutely amazing how powerful that is. Okay? You separate and you come back together. It's like you take a subparticle, it separates, it goes here and there, but it always comes back together, right? That's what it is. It's putting the pieces and puzzles back to you, which is the mind of everything, of all operation. That's it. We're done. Okay? A lot going on, right? All this configuration, all these face recognition settings, the Lion's Gate, what's going to happen here, what's going to happen there. Well, you have to understand more levels of a deeper core when you understand the particles and how to use this subparticles and how to use the atoms and how everything separates but all comes back together, right? But you don't become solid matter. Okay? So that's what it is. It's getting out of this. Getting out in how you see things in silhouette. You're everything. You're everything combined. I mean, you're constantly in a motion system like this. Okay, it's like a screensaver, right? You know what a screensaver is, right? On a computer, right? You're in sleep mode. You know, it's amazing, right? But it has no figure, right? Until it sees things. And then now it is what it is, right? And then it goes to the next. So it outlines its communication, communicates and addresses something else, and it forms it to that, right? And it's over here, but it has no shape. Letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols don't have shapes. They only have shapes when they start addressing things, when they're looking at them through perspective. Okay? So there's no shape, there's no form, there's no division, there's no location, there's no age, there's no space, there's no time, right? But in position of the balance unification lines of travels, there can be space, there can be time, there could be shape, there could be no shape. That all depends on you through binary and how you feel through your patterns of behavior. Okay? So I'm trying to get you to understand, team, of what you're coming into, how your settings is coming into its original design. So whatever is changing from inside is changing everything from outside of you. You expand outside, right? So you come out of the solid matter and you just become a liquid formation locations of everything in position of center operation. Okay? It's extremely powerful. Okay? Extremely, extremely powerful. So you're at that certain level where you start at the 144 platform, but then you go beyond that and everything just comes in information lines of balance. And your position of your vessel and your pod or your vehicle or your connections of your space arc or your capsule, whatever you are in position of, your Earth is constantly changing and rotating into different levels of design, of different levels of dimensions of design, different energy, different frequency, different vibration, different harmonics of space and time. Okay? That's what it is. All right? So if you watch Lucy, you understand that. Okay? There are point of views that are in position to its location system, but everything around you does not have a shape at all. This computer is the optical illusion. My phone is an optical illusion. It's protecting its own system, and you see it through its own illusion. But when you pick it up, there's the face of what it really is, of its configuration, of its consciousness, of awareness. Okay? It's putting everything together and becoming the mind of all operation of everything that you see, which is the center operation of you. Okay? It's extremely, extremely powerful, guys. Okay? Because all you focus on is 1 plus 1, right? But this is not a 1. This is not a 2. This is not a 3. This is not a finger. It's nothing. It's affirmations until you address it as a finger. Now it's a finger because a multituded screen, it changes its particle. It changes its atom. It creates its finger. But this is not a finger until it becomes a finger through configuration of face recognition. Okay? Hooah. Talk to you later.